research launch. This is the first research launch in the year 2025. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this insightful discussion on research ethics, upholding integrity, and responsibility in academic research. Research ethics is not just about compliance, it's about fostering trust, credibility, and accountability in academia. Whether we are collecting data, writing papers, or collaborating with peers, ethical consideration guide every step of our research journey. Today's sessions is designed to provide you with the fundamental principles, challenges, and best practices that ensure research integrity. So we are fortunate to have an expert who will walk us through key ethical concerns from informed consent and data integrity to navigating ethical approval processes in line with the University Ethics Review Committee's guidelines. Before we begin, I encourage all of you to actively engage, share your experiences, and ask questions because ethical research is not just a policy, it's a practice that we cultivate together. With that, let's begin our discussion. Please join me in welcoming our honored resource person, Professor Mrs. Tanuja Chandani Sandanayaka. Professor Tanuja Chandani Sandanayaka is a professor attached to the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies in the Faculty of Information Technology at the University of Moratuwa. Professor Sandanayaka is the chairperson of the University Ethics Review Committee of the University of Moratuwa. She is the former head of the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies and the former director of graduate studies in the Faculty of Information Technology. Professor Sandanayaka joined the University of Moratuwa in 2005 as a lecturer probationary and then became a senior lecturer upon completing Master of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy degrees in Education Technology and became a professor in year 2021. Over the last 19 plus years, she served the University of Moratuwa in many academic and administrative positions in different capacities. Her major research interests are in education technology and learning analytics, organizational behavior, business and management, and social innovation. Professor Sandanayaka has published over 50 publications in reputed and indexed journals, international conferences, book chapters, national forums, and magazines. She is currently supervising many PhD research students at the Faculty of Information Technology and master's level research project at the University of Moratuwa and other higher educational institutions. She further extended her service as a student counselor at the University of Moratuwa since 2010 and has guided the undergraduate students as the senior treasurer of the Faculty of Information Technology Students' Union for over 10 years. Professor Sandanayaka has played a main role in introducing the first external degree of the University of Moratuwa, the Bachelor of Information Technology BIT program, and currently serving as the Level 3 coordinator. She has also collaborated with the IT industry in research and academic work and served as a resource person in public sector involvement and projects. Warmly welcome, madam. So applause is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nayani, for the wonderful introduction. Yes, FGS is always, it's very closer to me. Since the inception of FGS, I have been working very closely with Professor Dilika Dias and as well as Professor Aditya. And I would like to thank you as well as Professor Gopura for this kind invitation, which I believe it's a part of my duty as the chairman of the University Ethics Review Board Committee, UERC, as well as a fellow academic who's actually used this particular ethics review a lot in both postgraduate and undergraduate research. So let me first share my screen. Right, so Okay, so today's topic is actually research ethics, upholding integrity and responsibility in academic research. I'm Tanuja Sandanayaka once again, and I'm the current chairperson of the University Ethics Review Committee of University of Moratuwa. Right. So moving on the presentation, so this is the presentation overview and lineup for the day. I have basically 6 topics covering first as introduction of what ethics are and what research ethics are in basic sense. And then I'll be little bit introducing to you the history of bioethics, why ethics is being consideration among the research community, and then especially about non-medical research, which I believe many of the participants are here today, is falling under this category. Their research might be falling under this category, non-medical research. So I'll be discussing about what are non-medical research and what are the primary purpose of the non-medical research, and as well as their common issues and the practices. Then as the fourth topic, I'll be introducing the UERC, University of Moratuwa Ethics Review Committee. And the mandate of UERC is a very procedural process of conducting the University Ethics Review. And in order to explain that, I'll be discussing about the different classifications of analyzing the different risks in your research, and how to apply the research ethical clearance application based on whatever your risk classification is. Finally, I'll be discussing about the basic nitty-gritties of what to do and what not to do under giving the clearance of ethical review. So this is the lineup, and right. So to start with, at the first, let's look at what ethics are. I think everybody here in this house is very aware of what ethics are. Basically, ethics are about the moral principles that we identify the things between what is good and bad. Everybody knows this because we get this thing from, especially from the parents, from your grandparents, from your siblings, where you have studied everywhere. And it governs a lot about your behavior, your conduct in daily activities, in your professional life, and also in your research activity. So basically, we know what ethics are. Everybody is practicing daily. So there's like no clear bad people or clear good people that we find in the society. So it's about what's good and bad and how you feel it and how you actually perceiving it as your behavior in conducting activity in your daily life. So my next thing is about also the same thing when you talk about how this word ethics is starting under the discussion, especially in the in the Western sciences. But I'm not going to talk about especially the religious, different religions, how ethics being defined. It might be controversial to this forum, but I'll be discussing about how ethics being discussed in the Western sciences. So it's actually started from the word, the Greek word ethos, which means the way of living. And this philosophically, a meaning of how human conduct or human behavior is especially pertaining to everyday life activity of us, the people around us. It's basically about the human conduct and especially about the behavior of every individuals in the society. So it's basically, when you talk about the ethics, it's a systematic study. It's a systematic study, a value, the concepts, the good and the bad, what is right and what is wrong, and the way you try to justify your principles in your study, or the way you actually define your activities in daily life. So moving ahead, the question, if you ask why ethics, so we discussed about what ethics are. Everybody knows what is good and what is bad. So then why ethics? So there are several reasons why we do have to be ethical and why are we supposed to practice ethics in our conduct. So basically it says it's helping people to act responsibly and with some sort of integrity. So that's really important, because we in our society or in our professional life, we help each other. So it's required everybody to help each other with integrity. So for that we need ethics. And then you may know that the trust of somebody is the key thing when you actually keep a relationship in daily life with anybody, probably in your professional life or in your personal life. So ethical behavior of your behavior fosters a lot of trust. So ethics is related to trust. And then when you go beyond the trust, in every legal system in the world, hook up with the ethics. So everywhere when you talk about the legal aspect, it has to be go and hook in some sort of ethics. So the legal systems in everywhere, it's actually rooted in the ethical principles of human beings. So that's why we talk about ethics. And also, if you talk about you as an individual, everybody is seated here right at this house. So is your personal your personal fact, your personal value system, it's about how you are trying to protect yourself with your integrity and your trust. So it's about reflect upon you as an individual. It's all about ethics. And finally, everybody would like to live in peace and happily. So it's what we really should do is what is best for everybody, and it's about ethics. So this is in the general terms of ethics. This is why we need to be ethical in our daily life. Now, when you talk about more about ethics, this forum is particularly about research ethics. So this is go beyond the daily, the practicing your daily aspect of life, your relationship status, or the way you conduct your things in your life. This is about the research ethics. So research ethics is basically a set of guidelines or the principles that we say it's how your research is being governed with integrity, with respect and responsibly, right? It's a set of guidelines. It's not a rule or a regulation, or it's not a law imposed by anybody. It's about set of principles and the guidelines. And it says how you should govern your research in order to show the integrity of your research, your responsibility of your research, and your particular behavior on how your research is going to be impacted on somebody else's life. So if you talk about the goal of research ethics, so basically the goal, research ethics goal is to conduct your research responsibly, safely, fairly. To whom? For the participants of your research, as well as you follow the integrity of your scientific process that you follow in your research. It's not about that you say, okay, I don't harm any participant with my research, but it's about the process of your research, scientific process of your research. So there can be many considerations in research ethics. The first one is about the respect for everybody, participants in your research. Anybody who participate in your study, you have to respect. Then the justice, it's about the treatment of participants without discrimination. Not somebody is being discriminated in your research, no it's not. Then integrity, transparency of what you do, your data collection procedures, your data analytics procedures, your data secure procedure, how are you going to report these procedures? This is about the integrity. So that has to be very transparent in your research. Then the confidentiality of protecting your data. If you're collecting somebody else's data, how are you going to protect these data? So it's about, probably you might be collecting some sort of sensitive data. So it's like, how are you going to save these data, or how are you going to protect this data? Then finally, it's all about your accountability and your responsibility. What methods that you are using in your research, how much you are responsible in overall, you as a researcher in your research or the scientific process of conducting your research, and you're not harming any participant of your research. Now this is basically the goal of the research. Now let me little bit talk about a little bit of history about bioethics. Now this is not just an ordinary lecture. If you are to talk about something, you need to speak about past. No, it's not. This is about to tell you how the concept of ethics has been established and where it has been rooted. Now this has a huge history because this is basically the early foundations of bioethics. It's directly related to the medical profession. It started with the medical practitioners with this thing called Hippocratic Oath. Even right now, I think medical professionals, medical students know about this Hippocratic Oath, which is introduced in 5th century BC. And this is about how a medical practitioner is gonna work. And they give, at the end of their graduation or whatever, they give an oath that they do not harm anybody that they treat. This is what the Hippocratic Oath is about, and it says various lines about how my conduct is about. So every medical practitioner should knows about it. So ethics starts, the bioethics starts from this point, from where this Hippocratic Oath is started to talk about the ethics of people. So then moving ahead, this has a new phase during this awakening of the Second World War. After Second World War, within 1940s to 1960s, everybody knows about, there were so many numerous unethical activities, harmful activities has been conducted by Nazis. And then there is this thing called Nuremberg Code in 1947, which has been in response to the inhuman activities conducted by Nazi medical experiments. So it has been started to talk about this informed consent. So right to withdraw from whatever the experiment that you do. So even if you talk about the previous Hippocratic Oath did not include any requirements about respecting the patient's autonomy, whether you were telling the truth for the patient, disclose the diagnostic information, asking for the your informed consent. It was nothing about that in the Hippocratic Oath. So that's the reason this new amendments about this Hippocratic Oath and about this biomedical research is talking about. Nuremberg Code has been the first version which has been started talking about voluntary consent. When you do in any research, you have the ability, you have the voluntary consent, ability to withdraw when you actually need it. If you are a participant of the research, the experiment, you have the right to withdraw at any time. So this has been established as a Nuremberg Code in 1947, and also then another version is called Declaration of Helsinki in 1964, has been issued by the World Medical Association. This is also upon the Nuremberg Code, and they say they are introducing the concept of ethical review boards. Now it's not only about you just can withdraw, it's voluntary consent. Now they say before you conduct an experiment, it has to be going through a properly convened committee. It's an independent ethical review which is conducted about your research process, which has been established under this Declaration of Helsinki in 1964. So this talks about even right now it's more of the medical research, and it's about forming of properly convened committees. So this particular researchers has to be presented your idea to this properly convened committee and then get the approval from. And then there's another version in 1979 which is called Belmont Report. Belmont Report is actually written by the National Commission for the Protection of Human. Now this is basically mostly specifically introduced for the biomedical and behavioral research. So Belmont Report is actually about biomedical and behavioral research, and there are some people who are in the biomedical research and the behavioral sciences research right now. So this is applicable for you. Some of the principles, some of the meanings, and how you should practice, it has been given as a definition for the biomedical people to accept. So it's from the Belmont Report in 1979. So this is a little bit of history about the bioethics. This is just to tell you, anything related to this ethical review boards and the committees are not just ad hocly formed. It's basically from a very properly convened, or it has a history about this and how it has been practiced even now today. Okay. Now let's move on to the ethical conduct of non-medical research. Now I said earlier there will be so many people right now listening here in this presentation house, which are non-medical people. They are not medical practitioners. You all are not basically doctors, right? So now that is, even right now it is applicable for non-medical research. Why? If anybody, even if you all are doing non-medical research, but if your research is involved with any human participants or any community, or if you are collecting any sensitive data, you should be thinking about their privacy, their dignity and the well-being. So that's why the ethics is applied, right? So you should, if anybody goes through this particular, a category of non-medical research, if your research is somehow involving with human participants, any community of interest, or if you are collecting any sensitive data, so you should be talk about the privacy of these participants, once again their dignity and their well-being. And that's why we are so interested about ethics in the non-medical research. Right. Now, this is the primary purposes of ethical conduct in non-medical, right? That is the first thing. Protecting their rights and their dignity of the participants. You are supposed to ensure, these individuals being treated with a respect and their autonomy to upheld. That is the first thing. Then informed consent. Your participants must voluntarily agree in take place in your research. Not you are trying to forcefully get them for your research, to collect data. So they should have some knowledge about what is this study is about, the purpose, the method that you use, is there any risk in participating this, or are there any benefits? So any of these things, which if you inform these participants, which is called informed consent. Then there are privacy and the confidentiality. Some research is extremely, collection of extremely sensitive data. So you should be very careful about their privacy and this confidentiality of these data that have been collected. Then respecting cultural and social context. Now this is really important, not many people talks about it. Respecting the different cultures. Now we as a multicultural country, we have different, we basically know these things because we have been exposed to this multicultural context. Now even if there can be some people who will be willing to go to some other countries and pursuing your PhDs. So you have to respect their cultures, respect their social context, right? Their beliefs, their attitudes, their traditions, their norms. It's not only about your research. Probably that might be right in your country, but for some other country it's not right. So this is really serious. You have to talk about it, right? Then finally the accountability and the holistically, you need to talk about your responsibility and talking about the conflict of interest. Now, when you are attached to any academic institutes, you have the guidelines to follow, you have the rules and regulations to follow. So, when you are not, following these, probably there can be some sort of conflict of interest. There can be parties that you have been involving in the research and now they are not, kind of things. You have to be very careful or mindful about that. So, this is basically context of the non-medical, research, and this is happening across, even the UOM as well. Now, when you talk about the common issues in this non-medical research, common issues, most of the people, they do research and they think that they can do anything. So that's a mistake, right? So first thing is that you have to have, you have this lack of informed consent. You don't tell your participant this is that, right? So then some research, you disregard the risk encountered by the participants, because you are in the research, you need somebody to test this thing, you disregard the risk. That's a problem. And then deception, you try to not tell the truth, it's totally violation of your ethical principles. That's also a common issue. You lie, right? Then this debriefing, not many people knows about what is debriefing is. Now when you actually, let's suppose that you ask several questions from some participant about a study that you are willing to do, so they might be emotional with these questions. Let's as an example, let's say that you are questioning about somebody who has been victimized in tsunami. Now we are questioning about that, might be so emotional for them. So you need to debrief, you have to restore this emotional state equally to what is the experience before the experiment. That is important. Not many people knows about what debriefing is, right? And then invasion of the privacy. When you're taking the photographs, some people take the videos. It's very confidential how we are trying to take the photographs. You have to get the informed consent and all that. Do it with care, right? Then, right. So, talking about these unethical photographs in research. So, what do you mean by unethical photographs? Now, these days people are having, mobile cameras, mobile phones with the cameras. You take lots of pictures. If you are in research field, you take pictures. Now, this is a very unethical practice. You can't take pictures like that. Though you have a mobile phone with you, you can't take while your data collection. No, it's not. So it's sort of a disrespect to the individual's rights and their dignity and their privacy. So if you are taking any photograph without permission, misinterpretation of these photographs of the subjects, exploring vulnerability of the population, or manipulating the images. Now, if you take this particular image in the slide, you can think it has been manipulated. One person has been purposely removed. So you can do things. These days the technology is so good and you can do things easily. You can take the videographs and remove things here and there, and you can cut up and create whatever you want. So this is unethical, right? And then if you talk about this, now if somebody is in grief, right? So if somebody, if you see your in your left side, you can see a woman is in grief. If somebody is in grief, if you are trying to photograph that kind of moment, that's very unethical. And also we have seen this is everyday news, we see this. That's so unethical, right? And then you take pictures like without the consent, photographs, manipulated these images, which is very bad, right? So these are unethical practices of taking photographs. Be mindful in that. Right, the next topic is about the data security, right? Now data security, data is like all over these days. You have data collections like not like 25 years back how people have been collected data. Now we receive, everybody knows, like 5-6 emails a day asking to fill the different surveys and whatnot, right? Now it's about the data. You giving your data, you participate in your surveys, and also in the same way you collect your data. Now, what is going to do with this data? Once you finish your PhD, you forget about the data security. You leave these data somewhere in the corner. What's about the protection of probably the photographs, maybe everything, whatnot, right? So, now data security in your research, it refers to the set of practices, protocols, and the technologies that you are going to use to protect research data from the unauthorized access, breaches, loss, or corruption. Now you have to think about all that. So there can be some losses, unauthorized access, right? So it's you safeguard, probably it's data for you, but it's data for your research, but it's somebody else's, privacy. The ethical, you're violating the ethical standards. It's really bad. So think about that when you're talking about the data security, whether you are actually securing your data correctly, right? Now in the same line, in the data security and data handling, when you're collecting data, it should be, we say it's anonymous. You cannot trace from your data set who has been given this data. So mostly if it's good that you can like anonymous, but sometimes for some research you have to reveal the identity, or based on some of the questions we can identify who the person has been contributed, and also confidential, right? So where this particular data is being protected. Then protection, it's about maybe the passwords, encryptions, encrypted files, where are you going to keep them, right? Then about the informed consent, right? When you collect your consent forms, keep them with you. Even for clinical research, we advise you to keep at least 5 years for non-clinical. If it's for a clinical data, we ask them to keep 15 years clinical data, 15 years, right? So that's the normal practice. Even you finish your PhD in 3 years, you forget about the data set, no way. You have to protect it in somewhere. Then ethics. Now this is basically, I just put this slide just to tell about ethics in presentations and the publications. Now this is relevant for us. Even UOM has a lot of publications going on every day. So when you try to do it, don't try to avoid misinterpretation of your results. Tell the truth, right? And also if you use the plagiarism detection tools to check the originality of your submissions, right? And also acknowledge the contributions of the parties, anybody, any author, any research assistant, or any fund organization. You have to be acknowledge these contributions. Then we have seen some people just trying to submit the same paper to multiple journals. Please avoid that. And also declare the findings, your sources, if you have, the funding sources. If you have, let's say now we have this SRC grants being running and people have taken grants, maybe U grants or anything, and then you have to declare where this funding source or your sponsorships has been, that's a practice. And also when you have to ensure where these AI tools not being introduced, and you get the incorrect information in your presentations and the publications when you do. So this is about the ethical practice of when you presenting yourself maybe in a conference or in a public forum. Be aware on that. Right. Okay. Now this is the most important part. The previously it's about the preamble or the introduction to what ethics is or what not is about. Now this is about the UOM ethics, which is very relevant to me. That these are the everyday business that we are dealing with. UOM ethics application procedure. Now we call this ethics application body as UERC, which is University Ethics Review Committee, which is being reported directly to the Vice Chancellor of the university or the Senate. this particular body has been approved to give the ethical clearance of the research conducted under the name of University of Moratuwa. So we are not giving any ethical clearance for any other institutes which has which our name is not quoted. So the primary purpose of UERC is to conduct ethical research to ensure the safeguard, ensure the safety and the well-being of everybody who's involved. Now this has been started, UERC has been formed in year 2018 under the guidance of the Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor Dilgadais, in 2018. So I have been serving for the ethics committee since inception, and then we have been receiving, the ethics application only from the postgraduates, and then later on there was this tendency of getting applications from, especially from the undergraduates as well. Then after starting the medical faculty of University of Moratuwa, medical ERC has been formed in March 2022, and then at the with this initiative of medical ERC, the University Ethics Review Committee has been removed from the link from the FGS, and it has been directly connected to the University Senate. So basically UERC has members from each faculty, from one member nominated by the dean, and the chairperson of UERC is being appointed by the vice chancellor of the university. So basically this is not a false finding mission. We are not trying to find the faults with your research, and I will tell you a few instances where we reject. We usually don't reject anything, but there are cases which we are rejecting. Basically those are very exceptional cases that I'll tell you what is rejection. Basically we don't reject anything, we actually always try to improve and get the ethics application approved. So basically this is not a false finding mission of anybody's research. So this is the composition. We have everybody. So right now we have 4 members from these faculties, except the faculty of graduate studies. Nobody is representing that because there are no students registered under FGS. We have this faculty of architecture. Dr. Purnima Sridharan is the nominee of the Dean of the Architecture. Faculty of Engineering, Dr. Aravinda Gunawardana. Faculty of Business, Dr. Amali Vijay Koran, and Faculty of IT, Dr. Priyanka Talagala. And you have this medical ERC running in parallel to the UERC, which is headed by Dr. Kishara Gunaratna, and they are not reporting to us, they are directly reporting to the Senate, because we don't really understand what this medical research are, frankly speaking. So that's medical. So that's how the practice of medical research is happening across the universities. So basically we have 4 members, and every month we have the meetings and to discuss about the applications. So I'll tell you what UERC is concerned about, right? So when somebody is lodging an application, okay, first of all the UERC procedures are there in University of Moratuwa website. When you go to the tab, the main page of UOM, under the tab research, you can find in your right hand side there's a tab called University Ethics Review Committee. Everything is given there. All the guidelines, everything is given there. So I'll tell you what actually we concern in UERC. We concerned about first of all the methodology of the research, right? Your data collection procedures, your compliance, the benefits, the risks, right? Informed consent. Have you submitted the detailed proposal for the ethics review board? Because we need to understand what you're trying to do. So then what I have to say is we have seen some of these things in this nature. Some bad methodologies which basically says bad science is bad ethics. So you being unethical because your methodology is wrong. So you have to be very careful in that. That's why we ask for the methodology. So your methodology speaks in your application your data collection procedure speaks on behalf of you. If you do something bad science, it's bad ethics. So be careful on that. So this is, be concerned about the methodology of the research. Then we specifically monitor and we evaluate the data collection procedure, right? So this section you are supposed to emphasize on who are the participants, are there any vulnerable participants, are you using any questionnaire surveys, are there any interviews being conducted, are you taking any specimens from or are you collecting any clinical data, or what is the duration, what is the frequency of the data collection, and etc. and etc. It has to be very detailed, your data collection procedure. Then any risks, any hazards, or any effects or any discomforts happens to the participants. Now say for an example, if you are taking blood from some participant for some research, you are taking, somebody's arm more than 3 minutes. It's, everybody knows it's not, that can't be done. So things like you question about some sort of traumatizing situations, maybe an accident, a natural disaster, maybe something related to your childhood, right? So we look at that. Maybe if you're taking photographs, now we have seen some of the photographs being collected, maybe some of the special wearable devices, or maybe some of the garments. So you take the photographs, right? So it has to be specifically say that is a risk, and there's a discomfort that can be happen to maybe if you are wearing some sort of a device and collecting data, there can be a discomfort for the participant. That has to be said in the proposal. So we are looking all that. Then participant selection. This is very important. What kind of participant is required for your research? Describe your population very correctly. Are they adults? Are they minors? Are they disabilities? Are they patients? Are they neonates? Are they students in the educational institutes? Are they students in a University of Moratuwa or any school? What are they? Your participant selection, their age, their gender, and all that, right? How many people you need, number of participants, how are you going to select it? And it has to be properly justified by the scientific findings. You can't just say, I need 100 participants for this study. It has to be scientifically justified, right? So then place of conducting the experiment. Now this is pretty important. Mostly this doesn't include in most of the ethical applications. Where are you going to conduct the experiment? Some people just send the application, just we are supposed to imagine, okay, simply because this is a related to University of Moratuwa research, it is being conducted somewhere inside. No, we can't. Where are you going to do that? So is it inside the laboratory? In which laboratory? You have to name the laboratory. Are you going to conduct this thing at a hospital? Which hospital? Is it from the field of, now let's say that you are talking about, let's say, tsunami or somewhere. So where are you going to conduct this experiment? So place of conducting the experiment. We need to see that. Then, okay, now this is about the right to refuse or the withdraw, the clauses which is there in the consent form. Statement by the researcher, consent by the participant. So you have to, voluntary participation and right to refuse and withdraw. You have to have all this, right? These statements in your consent form. Check whether these things are there in your consent form. It's in the web, right? Then the next is how the data is going to be used. If you collect this data, now you collect data, what are you going to do with this data? Are you going to write a thesis? Are you going to write a journal or a conference or any recommendation? Are you going to write a report to the government? What are you going to do with this data? Or are you going to collect the data? You make it available as a public or an online data set. So that is pretty important, because I have seen many people collect data without knowing what are you going to do with this data. Then confidentiality of the data security, I discussed this, right? So basically you have to keep information or confidentially, anonymously, secured places, maybe a lockable cabinets, if it's a soft copy, password protected computers, right? Or if you can't dispose the consent forms just finishing your research, once again, for 5 years for non-clinical, 15 years for clinical. Keep this data safeguard in somewhere. Right. Now, when the use of clinical data, this is pretty important. We have seen with this rising of this multidisciplinary nature of research being popularizing among the UOM research communities, there are some researchers being collecting clinical data. Now, clinical research involves in studying human participants, right? To, maybe from their treatments, maybe patients who are in the care. You are collecting data from them. Now, when you do this kind of research, this is basically it's the medical research, and we need every detail about this. Basically, these type of research applications are being reviewed by 2 medical experts, and we need data about that place where this research is being held, whether it's in the hospital ward, which hospital ward, under whose guidance this research is being conducted, or maybe a medical laboratory in a hospital. There can be vulnerable participants, maybe kids, maybe some people with some disease or some condition. You have to be properly follow the ethical principles, get the informed consent, risk assessment, and properly conducted. So we are advising people, we are advising the research students, the community of UOM, if you are conducting any research and you use or collect any clinical data, please consult a medical professional. If you are collecting any data from a patient or anybody who's different than a normal person, anybody who has a disease or any condition, please consult a medical professional and conduct this experiment under the close observation and the monitoring. That is the advice. This is not a rule. This is the advice, right? Please do it, because we have seen this. Because when there's a medical practitioner in your research team, so your quality of your application is really high, because you know what to do and what not to do. Then, okay, use the required language and the translations in the research. Now, usually your research application, your ethics application, everything has to be lodged in English. That is the official language that we use in University of Moratuwa. You can't lodge any applications in Sinhala or Tamil. But when you consider your research, when you are conducting any questionnaire survey or asking questions from the participants, you can't expect everybody to understand your questionnaire in English. That is not. So you have to get the questionnaires or whatever it is translated based on the literary levels of the participants. Some questionnaires it's okay. Some questions, some of the communities can understand in English. But some, now let's say that you are conducting a research for some of the experts in the industry, they probably get understood. But if you are just conducting your research to some of the laymen, definitely they are not. So your translations, both Tamil and Sinhala is required. You can't say just, okay, I can only speak Tamil, I will give you the Tamil version of it. No way. You have to give the Sinhala version of it as well. On the other way around, Sinhala and Tamil both, right? Now, we have seen the very nice example. We recently received one application who is actually speaking and conducting this particular research in Pakistan. So that application has been translated to Urdu, right? So that's a requirement, because that person is distributing that particular questionnaire in somewhere in Pakistan, right? So that is required. So right now, this stage, this is pretty important. How are you assessing your risk? Basically, we say there are 3 types of risk in your research. 3 types of risk. First is no risk, low risk, and above low risk. So if it is no risk, which says your study absolutely has no harm
done for any participant, so which has no risk at all. Maybe you use any data set, some data set in the internet, and you do some research, test with some people, not collecting any data from them. There's no risk. It falls into the no risk. So I have to declare at the beginning, my research falls under the no risk. There's no risk. Then there's this thing called low risk, and there's a little risk, which says there's a no foreseeable risk or harm or discomfort for the participant, but there can be some data being collected, which we call the low risk. Then the serious concern is about the above low risk. Now, in the above low risk, there can be research which involves the risk for the participants more than the discomfort and the inconvenience. Let's say that you are collecting some of the specimens from the clinical data from some of the participants, which is above low risk, which can be harm can be happen for the participant. Now this risk classification, now this is actually taken, now this point onwards I am asking you, this is the low risk classification. How are you going to understand whether my research falls into which risk category? The guideline is they are given in the web. So I am not going to explain this. I am just showing exact one-to-one clauses extracted from the UERC guideline document. It's there in the web. Now this is the low risk classification. These are the clauses for the low risk, and these are the low risk above low risk classification part 1. So we have two different parts, part 1 above low risk, part 1 and part 2. Please go through it. This is not the time to explain all that. It's very detailed, and it has to be you are silently you have to read, right? And then this is about the above low risk part 2. All these 11 clauses are given here, right? So please read it. It's there in the web, in the guideline document, in the UERC guideline document. Right. So if you're talking about this is the ethical clearance procedure, whatever the risk category that you are lodging. Let's say if it's a low risk. If it's no risk, we don't have to do anything. We are not taking any action for the no risk. If it's a low risk, you are supposed to submit the form A, application form A. Along with your application form A, you are supposed to submit all the required documents. Your research proposal, detailed proposal. If you have a questionnaire tool, it has to be submitted. The translations, your consent forms, information sheets. If you have taken any let's say permissions, that if you are assessing any risk, all those information is required to submit. So these applications of form A is being reviewed by UERC itself. If required, we are taking expert advices based on whatever the research that you are doing. Then upon successful submission of your application, there can be revisions, right? We review it and we ask the investigator to revise it and send. So based on the revisions, successful reviewing process, we are given ethical declaration number and a letter which has a unique ethical declaration number. Then above low risk part 1 and part 2, now here you are supposed to submit a different application which is called form B. Now this form B is also the same thing, you have to give every required document. Now the difference in the form B is your form is being evaluated by 2 external experts inside the university. If it's part 1 type of research, there can be senior lecturers which is relevant to that particular field. If it's part 2, definitely it has to be evaluated by 2 medical experts from the Faculty of Medicine. So it's a mandatory requirement that it has to be undergo through a medical experts, right? So upon completion of successful reviewing of part above low risk category, we are given ethical clearance number, not a declaration, the ethical clearance number. So this is the basic process, right? So here I am just giving you some of the ethics application that has been submitted and how this is. Now this is actually about a research measurement of presence, virtual reality using biosignals. All these, the examples that I am showing today is actually already conducted. So this is basically ethical concern is that connected to an electrical device and perform the task wearing this VR headset. So there's a problem. So it comes under the above low risk part 1. So we are not taking any specimens or whatever, it's just a wearable hat, right? So required documents, you need to have the data collection procedure, notice for the participant selection, information sheets, consent form, the proposal and etc. Right? Then this one is from Dr. Anjali De Silva in 2018, a study on high resolution pressure mat with the patients healed diabetic foot for ulcers. Now this is again ethical concern is about involvement of participants and patients and the participants, right? So there are participants but they are just sitting on a mat. We are not taking anything. Once again it's sort of a above low risk part 1 category. Right? So there you require documents like, how are you selecting the participants, questionnaire for the health records, information sheets, consent forms, proposals and etc. and etc. Then, okay, now this is actually another research, impact of viewing hospital landscape. Now this is from the Faculty of Architecture for the mental well-being of the medical students, right? This is the well-being of the medical students. This is about the building architecture. This is a low risk. There's no very specific questions that we are asking, but we are interviewing students. So we need the questionnaires, notice for the participants, information sheet. This is a very low risk, but you are getting consent, approval from the organization. All that is required, right? If you are going to to test the building architecture of some hospital, you need to get the approval, right? Then other than that, you required all these documents to be translated into Sinhala and Tamil as well, because this is for the laymen. This is not for the experts, right? Then another case study, this is inclusivity of marginalized communities during the post-natural disaster phase. This is Dr. Thaparan's one, and this is also above low risk part 1. Now even it looks like this is about the natural disaster, you are questioning from the people, ordinary people about the natural disaster, which can be sensitive, right? So you have to talk about the methodology, selection process of the participants, right? Questionnaire, your translations of the questionnaire, your information sheet and the, consent forms of the guardians. If you are interviewing the young people, right, you have to get the consent from the guardian, all that. Then this is Professor Dulmidani's research in 2022. Now this is about an adaptive software architecture framework for interactive learning toolkit. Again, you are taking above low risk part 1. Some students are supposed to, sit down and do it. So there can be discomfort that they are supposed to undergo, right? Same thing, you are supposed to get the consent from the guardians if the child is going to play this particular thing, right? So this is you are taking the ethical concern is that feedback will be collected from minors regarding the usability of the final prototype. Minors are the people who are below 18, right? Okay, this is again one of my research, developing a framework for enhancing livelihood for Gen Z economical marginalized community through technology enhanced learning. This is one of the PhD students' research, and this is basically ethnographic research where the researcher is actually sitting in the community and getting the data from. So all the this is also low risk, but there's an issue is that you require all research tools to be translated in all 3 languages, consent forms, information sheets, and etc. and etc. Then this again, Dr. Samir Surya's application in 2023 assessed the performance of AI-powered user-friendly neonatal seizures detection device. Now this is about low risk part 2. This is a biomedical research. Probably this is relevant to Nishara. right? So this is biomedical, right? So this is you're taking not only the data collected through the questionnaires, you're taking some of the biomedical inputs, right? So which is being conducted in the hospitals, because this is about the neonates, right? And you need the approval to conduct such research from the hospital as well. Okay. Right, so this is sort of this is there in the web as well, I believe. This is the ethical clearance process. I know that you can't read it, even I can't. So this is basically a flow chart of how we do. So when your application comes here, somehow other way it get through you if you do the the relevant and required alterations to be, or the revisions to be done. So ethical clearance process basically. Meeting is held every Friday of the month, last Friday of the month, fourth Friday. So your applications are supposed to be sent on the before the fourth Monday of the month, fourth Monday. Emails are to be sent to UERC at um.lk, nowhere else. There are no physical application submission. Don't submit anything to the FGS. FGS is not responsible in doing that. If you are a PhD student, don't submit to the FGS. Then ethical clearance period is valid only for 1 year. If you cannot proceed your research within 1 year, maybe you have to ask for extension for the same. So, or else you have to send an annual report asking for extension, right? Now, when you submit, there's a guideline to be, you have to submit the applications, you have to submit the forms, approval applications, annual reports, etc. and etc. So it's there in the web. So this is the clearance application process. No review for those who have submit the applications after conducting the research study. We have received some applications like this. If you conduct your applications, the research, and then all of a sudden you realize you require ethics approval for the publication, no way. We are not giving any ethical. This is the one instance where we reject application. We reject, right? If your research has been already conducted, now we are asking for the ethical clearance for the experiment which has been already conducted, rejected. This is the one instance that we reject, right? Also, we don't review the applicants who are not related to UOM research. We are not rejected. And then, yes, and there are some students who were University of Moratuwa students, and then they are passed out now, and they are asking to ethical approval for the research they have conducted in the final year. No way. And there are some, we receive applications from elsewhere. Some of the foreign students, simply because they don't have ethical review boards in their universities, they send applications to us. We are not reviewing, right? Now those are the very few instances where we reject applications. Other than that, we don't reject anything. It's a process and it takes time over and over again, and it's a continuous improvement. So issues with our students, it's issues with us basically. Basically, what we see is you are not submitting the correct set of documents, incomplete applications, no signatures, no dates, mostly research proposal is missing. It's the application only, no tool, no translations, no consent form, it's just the application. This is a mistake issue by the UO. And also not submitting on time. Like if you have experiment to be conducted next week, don't submit the application this week. It takes time, right? So ahead you have to plan with your supervisor and do it. Don't submit the last minute, because the process cannot take place last moment, right? Applying ethics after conducting the study, I think I said that. Then changing the methodology and the study once the ethics is granted. This is not acceptable. So you can't change your methodology. You apply for one thing and then in the middle of it you change everything. You can't, right? And it's a nightmare for us not responding to the emails. So please respond to your email, and some people put some non-responsive email addresses, and then we have to wait until so many days calling people and put your working phone numbers and the emails in your application. Then yeah, so that's that. This is what we discussed, what ethics are, and basically how ethics have been formed, and then what non-medical research ethics are. I spoke a little bit about the history of ethics and also issues what the researchers are actually on the research ethics, and especially about the UERC application procedure, different types of risk classifications, and how you successfully lodge your ethics application. Yeah, that's that, and thank you. And you all are welcome for any questions from the audience. So we have some participants here as well in the FTS boardroom. If you have any questions, please ask.
So dear researchers and students, we welcome your questions. If you have, please feel free to ask your questions and any clarification if you want to hear.
Mandatory to submit the proposal even if there is no risk in the research.
Well, if it's no risk, you have to. I think that's what we discussed like 2 hours back. If it's no risk, so then declare that there's no risk.
The application procedure we have to go through.
No, if there are no risks, you don't have to. No. Now let's say that we are from the IT faculty, you are taking a data set from somewhere internet and you do some research. You don't have to, unless you take the data set and develop some of the application and test it with the participants, then it's required. But if you are to work only with the data set, no need.
So let's say there's a research that that could emit some kind of power level in microwave or radio frequencies.
Okay.
That telecommunication research.
Right.
So in the beginning, we don't know whether there would be a risk or not.
Right.
So in that case, since we have some suspicion, we have to submit the application.
Well, if it's the human testing is involved, you can.
Because, the humans in the surrounding will be affected in that kind of situation. There will be no human participation. But if we radiate surrounding, then obviously some people will be affected. In that case,
Well, we have never received anything like that. That's a very special case. So it's not the participants, but the surrounding people. I think yes, you can submit, and then maybe some sort of isolation might be required to test your research. Maybe you can ask permission from the university to evacuate a place officially. Something like that can be happen. Maybe you can test that in a holiday or something. So the place can be evacuated, the building can be evacuated with the document or the required permission. You can request it for the higher authority. We have never received anything like that. So that I really don't know the procedure for that, but based on your question, I can say that. Yeah. Something like that.
Participants is not involved.
Yes, I understand. So there can be some other surrounding people.
Including the researchers.
Yes. Anybody else? If you have any question from the audience, there's a question posted. Naini, can you see there's a question posted?
There is questions. With the rise of AI application use, what new ethical challenges do researchers face?
Well, AI, basically the AI challenges there are these days, especially AI in the sense like lodging your applications, writing your proposals, writing your journal articles. Many people use, let's say, ChatGPT, right? and it might kills your idea. It doesn't comes out exact what you are trying to do. Maybe it's okay, you can maybe test your grammar or your flow of your sentence, but you may have to be very mindful, careful in doing that, because we have, I think as academics, we have received a lot of applications from the students written by ChatGPT these days, and it doesn't connect it to your research idea at all. Night. So it's very be very mindful, especially for the PhDs, because it's a very unique, what you're trying to present here is very unique for yourself and for the community, research community that you're presenting. So when you are trying to use a lot of AI in that, your uniqueness might kills in that. Your tone, what you're trying to present here, your story might kills in the middle. Okay. Need permission
Now
from
it's
the host.
okay. Now, Chaturangri, you can ask question. Now it's okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. The question I have to ask is the ethical clearance that we obtained from University of Moratuwa, is it acceptable by the journals, or do we have to again obtain an international ethical clearance to publish our articles in the journals, especially the
No, that
indexed
is
ones?
acceptable. Yeah, that is what the University of Moratuwa Ethical Board is acceptable.
Okay, my next question is, as you said, madam, we have to request for the ethical clearance prior doing to the experimentation. So
Yes.
when we obtain the ethical clearance and while doing it, sometimes we may not exactly know the participants. So is it possible to submit the consent forms later, or if there's a change in the methodology, what do we need to do?
Well, you don't have to submit the field consent forms. No, this is you are supposed to submit the format of the format of the consent form that you are going to use. That has to be made available. This is what I am asking from the participants.
Thank you, madam. If there's a change in the methodology, do we have to apply again?
Well, if there are some cases, maybe there are some people who have different phases in their research, so they apply again for a different part of your research. You apply, but it's not a change. It's maybe an extension for your existing methodology, or a different part or a different phase in your research. Methodologies might not be changed like that, right? If it's like that you have to discuss with the.
Yes, that's what I meant, madam. If we are going to another stage, we have to apply it again, right?
Yeah. If it's for a
Okay.
different stage, you have to apply. Yes.
Yes, thank you, madam.
Any more
Excuse me,
questions?
one
Yes.
other question
Yes.
related to my research. I'm doing a research with intimate garments. So, if with intimate garments, underwear.
Yes.
So, if I get the consent from the wearer, is it okay to take images without the face, which cannot be identified, or is it still not ethical?
No, you can get pictures if it is required to get the. We have received some of the applications like that. So for the the textile research, you require these pictures. So that is for the research purpose. So informed consent has to be taken, and you have to be tell the participant which part of their body is being photographed, because mostly there's some of these intimate testers is being weared by the models, and you're taking the photographs. So you have to inform this model, okay, this is or the participant, this is, we are going to take a photograph, and this is the body part that we are going to take a photograph. Maybe you avoid the face that you can't recognize. Yeah.
Well noted, madam. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Next question.
Right.
If we are using any AI tool, ChatGPT, etc., is there any ethical clearance, or we need to mention that we have used AI tool? Certain document uploads that ask if we have used AI tool when posted this.
Well, UOM application procedure, there's no such question. Right now, maybe we may have to revise the set of documents because, what we don't we need the detailed document we required is the proposal. No? So proposal, basically most of the time everybody is submitting the proposal submitted for the proposal defense, especially the PhDs. They are in the first 6 months they are submitting the defense for the proposal. So that proposal might work. So it depends on whether you use ChatGPT for developing your proposal. It's up to you and your supervisor and your research panel. I can't, we are not checking that basically. We are not checking. That is submitted for any AI tool or not. We are not doing that.
So my understanding,
Yeah.
medical faculty executive committee,
Yeah.
they provide the ethical clearance for the other universities as well.
Okay.
So in our case, why we are not providing such ethical clearance?
That's the question that we had to ask Dr. Kishara. Well, but sometimes yes, we maybe in future they will be doing it. We have to speak to Kishara and see. And also we receive quite amount of applications from elsewhere, especially from some of the foreign university students, and they say that they don't have ethical boards in their university, and maybe it's up to the university to, maybe FTS or whoever can maybe as a service provider we can do it in future. Medical faculty of course might have a different line, but what we also sometimes some of the applications, if we cannot understand, especially biomedicals, some of the biomedical applications we directly send to the medical committee, medical ethics, because it's so much clinical. And so recently we did something like that, and we send that for the clearance for the medical ethics, because it's so vulnerable, and it has to be reviewed by the medical professionals, and it's relevant to the medical ethics. So we can, yes, we can. I think in future we have to, as an expansion. Now, earlier I remember when we started ethics clearance, process in 2018-19, we received like once in 3 months application. So now, like every month we have many applications. Sometimes we have nearly 6-7 applications, new applications. So it's a very tedious work, it's a very tedious work. We need to sit down and read everything. It takes lots of time. You can't say it's like 15 minutes, 45 minutes a meeting. It takes a lot of time. So we need to sit down and read everything very carefully. Sometimes we argue about it. So it's a very tedious process. In any context, either it's medical ethics or either it's non-medical ethics, it's a very tedious work. It takes lots of time. And I am especially thank everybody in the ethics review committee. Very dedicated staff members are there. They are very serious. Everybody comes from, as the dean's nominees are very serious people. And also I would like to mention about Dr. Kishar being the chairman for the medical ethics, is a member of ethics, UERC as well. So he gives a lot of feedback for some of the medical related research. Any more questions? If you all, I don't know whether it helped or not, this presentation for you all, especially those who are in the chat room, in the online mode, asking questions in the chat room and etc. You can go ahead and ask any questions if you are having.
And thank you so much, madam. So actually, it's helped a lot, and we learned a lot. I think so for that. So as we conclude today's sessions on research ethics, upholding integrity and responsibility in academic research, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to our professor. So sharing such valuable insight on this critical topic. The principles of research ethics are not just guidelines, they are the foundation of credible, responsible and impactful academic work. So today's discussion has reminded us that ethical research is not just about avoiding misconduct, it's about fostering a culture of integrity, respect, and accountability. I encourage each of you to take these lessons forward, reflect on your own research practices, and ensure that ethics remain at the core of your academic journey. So, as you navigate ethical challenges, remember the University Ethical Review Committee are here to support you. So once again, thank you our eminent speaker, madam. Thank you so much for your contribution, and our participants and everyone involved in making this session possible. So let's continue to uphold the highest ethical standard in research and continue meaningfully to the academic community. So thank you everyone, and I wish you all the very best in your research endeavors. Thank you so much.
And thank you everybody, especially Naini and Professor Gopura for inviting. Thank you very much.